another Money Moves. How are you today, Wendy?
I'm doing great. Happy Tuesday. Good to see you.
I know, right? It's a kind of a dreary day out there, and a lot's going on. We had the debate, I think, since we last had our event,
Mhm.
Tuesday, and that was just interesting. That's all I'm going to say. And then there was another attempt on Trump, I guess, down in Florida this
I
past weekend,
know. On
which is
Sunday.
crazy. Yeah, so we're not here to talk about that. We're not going to get too political, but we are going to talk about what we talk about, right? The economy. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, so I had a question come up. I have a group of girlfriends that you know, we chat about life events, about things going on. And one of the questions that was, brought up in the group, they said, Wendy, what do we do? Like, what's your recommendation to prepare in case, certain things that could happen, like, the US dollar going away or, the economy crashing or us moving to a different type of currency. Like, what happens? How do we prepare? What do we need to do today to do the best to buffer against any big change coming? So I wanted to ask that to you.
All
Like,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
how do people
All right.
prepare?
Well, let me think about that for a second. So that's a lot there, folks. So what do you do to prepare? What's that REM song? It's the end of the world as we know it, right? So what
Yes.
do you do in the event of a big economic, I don't want to call it explosion, implosion, maybe? I don't know, but we'll talk about it in just a few seconds. All right. So it's the end of the world as we know it economically. What can you do to prepare? Well, you can't. So quick show today. But no, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of things actually I think you can do. But the hard part is I think it's, and I'd be interested to see what else you guys talk about in that group. It's almost like what is that movie Fight Club? You don't talk about what's going on in Fight Club. So but
That's great.
you're asking a valid question because there's a lot going on in the economy. But the challenge is knowing, is it just an economic hiccup or is it something bigger? Of course, you watch the news and it's like it's the end of the world, depending on what size you're at. Or, oh no, everything's fine. Nothing to see here,
Everything's
folks.
fine.
Move along.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, or actually mainstream media, everything's fine. Unless,
Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. So, there are a lot of things you can do. I've had friends ask me too. We've done a show on the central bank digital currency. Um, Obviously, the central bank governments are looking to replace Bitcoin and some of the others. Will they ever do it? I don't know. I don't think so, but they can do a lot to control, and
right.
they want to shift us to a digital currency. Number one, it's obviously much cheaper because they don't have to manufacture any of the actual currency itself, and that's actually a fairly expensive process. Secondly, that gives them a lot more control on things like greenhouse initiatives and green economy initiatives and stuff like that. Right or wrong, we're not getting into the debate on that, but it's one of those things that it gives the government a lot more control when they remove money. So how do you prepare for that? And then, should I have any kind of preparations for, you've got the what was that show, Preppers or something like that, and National Geographic
Yeah.
had it out for a while. You know the one I'm talking about. So
Yes.
there's that extreme of it as well. But not to
Like,
overcomplicate it or kind of make it into some big doom and gloom. There are some things you need to be prepared for,
mm.
right?
Yeah, I think
um you
one of the
know
questions that the girls were asking is like, do I need cash on hand? If so, how much? Do I need gold and silver? If so, where do I store it? Do I keep it in my house? Do I put it in a facility? You know, um, do I keep all my money in the bank or do I take it out? So it's those kind of questions I think a lot of people have, and they want to be smart. But who's out there really talking about what to do? I don't know.
yeah, and that's one of the things that looking at, for example, should you have cash on hand? Definitely. Yes, yes, yes. Where should you keep it? Well, my grandmother, I remember, had cash. She was a child of the Depression, right? So she
Mhm.
had cash. She'd keep it in an envelope in her freezer, in the refrigerator. And I don't necessarily recommend that. You want to have some kind of a safe or something to keep it not only secure from theft, but secure from fires, because
Mhm.
fires do happen. But yeah, I always recommend having cash on hand, and just in case, something happens, power outage or something like that. Um, the question is, how much? I mean, you look at what happened in Greece a few years ago, where they had an economic reset, an economic collapse. The EU, I think, had to come in and bail them out, but they were limiting on what you could pull out
Right.
from ATM machines, right? The amount of cash. I think it was like $200 a week, maybe. That sounds kind of extreme, but you think about what you go through buying fuel for your cars, things like that. And if there's some kind of glitch in the system,
Mhm.
good old cash on the barrelhead, right? It will help you through that. So ideally, you want to have, maybe a month's of expenses set aside in cash, depending on what your expenses are. If you can't do that, have a few $100 stashed away somewhere just in case, right? And I would keep it in a safe. But yeah, you definitely want to have some cash on hand. That amount's going to be different from everybody. But I think, a good rule of thumb is maybe, 1 month of expenses,
Mhm.
just cash on hand. Again, don't put it somewhere where you're going to be tempted to spend it. It's there, break glass in case of emergency. Um, but I'm not saying a lot of people, oh, I don't trust the banks. When these banks, banks are insured, your money's insured.
Yeah.
They're typically going to be safer, in the event of something happening, plus ease of access, with ATMs and things like that. But the cash on hand really helps with regards to if there is some kind of glitch in the system.
Right.
So that's number one. Your second question about should I have precious metals? And a lot of people, there's differing opinions on this. I don't see gold and silver going up in value. Okay. In my opinion, that's not what's happening. Gold and silver are fixed in value. It's worth, X, right? And the value goes up, and it's really more of the dollar buying power of the US dollar goes down. And
Right.
that's where it seems as though, oh, well, gold's going up in value. No, it's the dollar's going down. So you have to spend more of your cash to buy that 1 ounce of gold or that 1 ounce of silver.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's a
Yeah, and I think you've talked about before, like it's more of a buffer against inflation than it is an
yeah,
investment. Yeah.
yeah, it's more of a store of buying power, basically. And there's a great book, you mentioned it before, what is it, Whatever Happened to Penny Candy?
Yep.
And it's a great read. It's a very simple read, a short read. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube and you haven't heard, or read that book, Whatever Happened to Penny Candy, grab a copy. It's a great book, and it really does a good job explaining what's going on with our currency, what's going on with central bank, the monetary system from a central bank, fiat currency, and all of that. So, I like to see 5 to 10% of people's assets. Well, why wouldn't I want to put all my assets in gold and silver? And this is one of the big, the big challenges of, do you play the game or not?
Right.
Right? Because there's extremes on both. There's people, that, oh, everything's fine, right as rain, and just, the economy's as strong as it's ever been. And there's the other extreme where doom and gloom, let's build a bunker and we're gonna, buy goats and do all this stuff. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's fine. It's one of those where you plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Right.
But if you put all your money, and I've talked to people that have said that they were going to do this, put all your money in gold and silver. The problem with that is that's not going to keep up and build true wealth in the markets and things like that. So again, it's paying attention and leveraging the system to build wealth for yourself. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if we all go to digital currency or we all go to gold and silver, the barter system, whatever the case may be, right? The more assets you have,
Right. It's a better
wealth
position.
you have, the more that's going to convert into, the new system or the new whatever, right?
Mhm.
For example, if they go to a digital currency and get rid of the US dollar, well, they're going to say it's a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning every dollar gets you a digital dollar, or
Mhm.
every dollar gets you two digital dollars, or every dollar gets you half of a digital dollar. So the more the current status that you have or the current system set up in the system that you have today is going to benefit you down the road as well. So that's why, I don't think you want to completely pull out of the system and just go all gold and silver. You kind of follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked to a few people that are that extreme that are like, no, I'm not putting my money anywhere, but in my house or, in the basement or whatever. And yeah, if to me, there's got to be a balance. And
Exactly.
yeah, to your point, I mean, I think the bottom line is grow as much wealth as you can and stack as much
Yeah.
cash as you can. Because you're going to have the upper hand should things go crazy.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, FEMA does a good job of kind of giving people a baseline. There's and it's out there. Very few people actually read it, but they've got a plan. It's 3 days of survival gear in your house and things like that. Everybody needs a gallon of water per day per person in your household. So make sure you have 3 to 5 days set aside for that. Food in the event that there's some kind of weather catastrophe. I mean, you see tornadoes, hurricanes blowing through the devastate areas. Um, and so it's the same thing, if something happens, ATMs are shut down because of major power outage. Okay, that's where the cash comes in because credit card machines aren't working at that point.
Yep.
So that's kind of part of that plan. But you start pulling back and looking at, the extremists. I don't want to call it extremists, but those people that feel like the entire system's going to collapse and we're going to go to some Mad Max type of thing. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it'll be more like what happened to the Soviet Union and Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But a lot of people were impacted by that negatively. A lot of people died from that because they weren't prepared. But having gold and silver on hand is a good thing. I would never store it in an off-site facility, just for the simple fact that, and I see people buying. I've got their certificate that says I own so much gold at their warehouse in New Jersey or Delaware or whatever. Yeah, that does you no good if there's a major systems issue.
Right.
So that's why I like to have, again, cash on hand, have gold and silver. And I do not obviously put gold and silver just in a box under your bed. That's something where you want to invest in like a safe or something like that and have the appropriate mechanisms to protect your wealth. And going back to what we were talking about, like Fight Club, it's definitely not something you want to tell people about. It always cracks me up, when people talk about that. I'm sorry, do you have
That's
something
funny.
to add?
No, I just think that's funny. Sometimes I'm that person that I say too much. I'm the over speaker sometimes. So,
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's one of those things, but looking at you can't pull out of the system and
right.
just expect, because what happens is inflation starts eroding everything, right? Yeah, your gold and silver will hold its value, but it's not necessarily growing in value to bring you more assets, right? It's not creating additional revenue for your additional assets. It's just holding its buying power. You know, um, Taking money that you have, if you have an excess of cash sitting in a bank, because a lot of people are afraid, I don't want to lose my money. And that's right. I mean, once you start losing it, and that's Warren Buffett rule number one is don't lose money. Rule number
Mhm.
two is see rule number one, because once you start losing money, you're going the wrong way.
Right.
And not only are you losing the money, you're losing the time it takes back to get that lost money back that you should have been gaining, but you were just getting your lost money back. So that doesn't count as a true gain. But looking at what's going to create revenue streams for me, what's going to create assets, and what do people need? People need what? Food, clothing, shelter, right?
Shelter. Yeah.
You're not going to, unless you're a farmer, and you have chickens or whatever. Okay, great. So you're creating a food structure. You've got to be able to defend that. But going back to housing, I love real estate as part of a financial plan, not all of it. Again, I don't think anyone should stick all their eggs in that one basket. But real estate's a great investment. Protected asset classes, we talk about that as well, where
Mhm.
you can actually get market returns, or market driven returns, excuse me, and not worry about down markets. And so that's gonna protect you in those down years. You don't gain that year, but you don't lose the money, which means you don't lose the time when the markets start picking back up. I mean, our market driven system, the capitalist approach to what we do, is it perfect? By no means. However, it is the best system that's out there. I'm a true through and through capitalist. And it's one of those where you've got to educate yourself on what to do, but you've got to participate in the system in order to really grow your money. You can't hunker down and have a
Right.
treasure chest in your backyard of gold or cash or whatever and think that it's going to be okay. Maybe if you're debt free and you don't want to leave a legacy or anything like that, but you've got to participate in stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anything else to add? I feel like I'm rambling on that a little bit, but it's such an important thing. I
No,
just
I
want to
mean, I
kind of
wanted to have the question answered for my crew, because I'm like, if they have the question, I know a lot of people do. But yeah, to your point, like, you've got to participate in the system. I like some people that are really extreme and don't want to do anything. It's like, okay, and what happens if none of the stuff you think is going to happen happens, right? And you've spent all
yeah,
these years just sitting on your money and not growing it,
yeah.
and you're behind. So you want to take precautionary measures and be prepared, but not be, just living in a scarcity mind. And,
It-
I mean,
and that's
really,
a big part of it, right?
yeah.
People that have that scarcity mindset. I mean, you're missing out on a lot.
Hmm.
And again, that's why I like the approach. Hey, prepare for the worst,
Hmm.
and plan for the hope for the best, plan for the worst. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that yeah, you should take precautions. You should have 3 to 5 days of food, water in your home, right,
Hmm.
at all times, just in case, and rotate it out, first in, first out. That's step number one. Step number two is have some kind of power generator, whether it's a small generator you pick up at a pawn shop for $50 or whatever, just to be able to run your, basics, your refrigerator, whatever the case may be. That's kind of your physical preparation. Have some cash on hand in a locked, secure location. Have some way to defend yourself. We're not going down that road. But and then have the gold and silver too. And 10% of your assets, 10%, not 90, not 100, but 10% of your assets in gold and silver, or platinum, or whatever you're comfortable with. I think that's a good rule of thumb in order to protect some of that buying power. But you've got to participate in the marketplace as far as, I want my money to truly grow, not just stay static, but truly grow. And that's where investments come in play. I like protected asset classes. Again, we talked about that. Real estate comes into play, and I think there's going to be a big opportunity in real estate probably here within the next 12 to 18 months, just because what's going on in the economy. Obviously, November is going to be a big factor in determining that. So make sure you get out and vote. Do you want 4 more years of what we've had, or do you want to go back to the last previous 4 years where it was awesome market growth and everything else, and we were a secure country? So you be the judge. But you've got to do something prepared. The worst thing you can do is just have blinders on and think that everything's okay,
Right.
or go stick your head in the sand, or go down into a bunker and think, okay, I'm just going to ride this out. Because if nothing happens, like you said, then you just wasted all that opportunity.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Good
yep.
stuff. I like it.
Yep. Yep. I'm going to close with one thing. And I was talking to some people earlier about this. So there's a story in the Bible about the parable of the talents. Talents. Yeah. It's where, there's 3 guys and they get some money. I think it's in Luke, maybe. I'm sorry, I'm horrible at Bible memorization. But that's a really good story to kind of preface on what you should be doing with your money. And this is an opportunity for you, right? You don't want to have the scarcity mindset where you go bury it in the sand. You want to go out and grow it, but you can do that tactfully. There's risks out there in everything. You've got opportunity risk, you've got market risk, you've got inflation risk, you've got tax risk. So there's all these risks. So just learn what you can about it. And that's why we do this show. And then that way you can take action to help your family make some awesome money moves. So again, I encourage you, if you catch us on our podcast, thank you so much. Give us some love, give us a like, give us a follow. Do us a favor, watch the previous episode or listen to the previous episode. That helps the algorithms as well. And if you missed any of our videos and you want to watch the full video, go back to blackswanmoney.com. We got some changes coming up we're pretty excited about. But if you have a topic you want to hear about, just like Wendy's friends reached out to her, reach out to us. Let us know what you want to hear. And as always, make some money moves for you and your family, folks. Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.
See ya.